Hey guys, Matthew here. So I'm sure your guys' inbox has been filled with tons and tons of videos of patch notes reviews and whatnot from a bunch of other content creators. Don't want to take anything away from them. I'm sure all of them have their own opinion. All of them have whatever they have to say about it. So I don't want to just do another reading. So I'll try to make it quick. I'll try to just basically go over the stuff that I think really matters, and then I'll tell you guys a little bit about my predictions for the upcoming league, which starts in 2 days, Delirium. How I'm feeling about it, and just in general, little tips and tricks, as always. Obviously, in terms of currency generation, because that's my thing. So obviously there is the new Challenge League. That's cool. The major content basically looks like we've got some new skills, and then there's the cluster jewels, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. In the minor stuff, we have some improvement. Looks like new stuff like that. There is one thing that I'm really happy about is that they finally added a stash in Einhar's Menagerie. And to anybody who does beast crafting or who has ever done any beast crafting, yes, you did it, Reddit. I'm so happy about this. This is a major change, and while it is actually like a very minor thing, it changes a lot, and it's a very huge quality of life improvement. So fuck yeah, dude, we got a stash at Einar's Menagerie. Otherwise, not too much I want to talk about. Looks like they improved some settings, stuff like that. There is a little bit of an Atlas change from the look of it. From the look of it, seems like basically a nerf to the amount of maps you're going to be getting, which I think is fine. We've been drowning in maps ever since last league, so I think it's okay that they nerfed it down a little bit much, but they did say that you're still going to be having plenty of maps. They're just doing some testing with the numbers and tweaking things around because obviously this is the second patch or second league since the coming out of the brand new Atlas. So there's that. There are some new bonuses. Again, looks like overall it's a little bit of a nerf to the Atlas, but nothing crazy. Looks like they buffed Sirius, so Sirius might be a little bit stronger. Nothing crazy there. It seems like they did buff Shaper. Shaper is going to take significantly less damage at the beginning of the fight, so I'm guessing that's to prevent people from just nuking him in 1 second, and actually, having to do the mechanics of the fight. Guessing that's why. They looks like they buffed a lot of sextants. A lot of sextants were buffed. That's probably because they saw the price of the sextants last league. They were basically worthless. Sextants were absolutely useless and worthless, and the vast majority of people were not using them. So there was such a huge amount of them available that the prices was unbelievably cheap. And the reason for that mostly was just because it wasn't convenient to use them. So they're buffing them and they're making them more convenient to use. So overall, a good thing for people who like to juice up some maps. Metamorph going core, that's cool. 10% chance to find a metamorph in your map, just like any other league mechanic. Cool stuff. Looks like they improved Val Site areas. That's actually really cool. One thing I'm happy about is that they're now considered rare areas. They're no longer considered magic areas, which does mean that they're going to be more rippy. That being said, it also means better rewards and better XP. Another thing that's pretty nice about this is they actually removed all reflect, be it physical or elemental, from those zones. So if you're somebody who's been skipping those zones, just in case you one-shot yourself by not paying attention, you're going to be safe now. There's not going to be any reflect. As you can see, elemental and physical damage reflection modifiers can no longer appear for these areas. That's really good. So hardcore players as well, you're going to be able to farm Val site areas more safely. Character balance, looks like they changed a couple things. A little bit of a nerf to elusive, nothing crazy. Whatever. There is a pretty big rework with animate weapon. Apparently one of the scaling on it was just not working properly, so they did cut it down by a lot in some places. But if the scaling is actually going to work, it looks like animate weapon might actually be a really good league starter. It's very cheap, requires just about nothing. You don't even need to link the actual weapon, so very nice for animate weapon. It seems like. Um, Looks like skill balances. Yeah, there other little skill stuff that they changed. Nothing crazy. There is Blade Blast, which allow you to destroy the Blade Vortex or Blade Fall stuff. That seems interesting. We'll have to see how good it really is. Otherwise, a couple little buffs and nerfs here and there. Nothing crazy, honestly. And this whole thing, there's nothing in there that I saw that was incredibly big, except the change to Pyroclast Mine is actually pretty massive. It fires an additional projectile for every 4 prior mines in detonation sequence, and previously it was every 2. And the helmet enchants for Pyroclast Mine also now is only 1 additional projectile instead of 2, and it's only from Uber Lab, which means they're going to be way less available and probably way more expensive as well. So is Pyroclast Mine dead? I don't think so, but it's definitely going to be a little bit more on par with other mine skills. Probably still going to be the best when it comes to bossing. But, you know, they did pull down the damage by a decent amount. The cast time did go down, so that's actually a good thing, a little bit of a buff. But in general, it went up for mines, I believe. So in the end, we're looking at maybe, if I was to guess, maybe like a in the very end game, like a 30% damage reduction to Pyroclast mines, because of, like I said, the helmet enchant and other sources as well. But overall, still, I think it's going to be a very potent skill. That being said, once I get to the predictions, I'll tell you guys a little bit more about some other skill. Looks like they nerfed Necromancer, zombies, specters, just about every skeletons as well. Looks like they nerfed all of them. I don't think it's massive nerfs. Looks like it's like 1 less skeleton, 1 less zombie, 1 less specter, or like 1 less specter level, that kind of stuff. It's not massive, but with all the nerfs put together, I guess instead of having like a 30% play rate for summoners, we might have like more around the 15 to 20, which goes back in line with all the other things. So you know what? I think summoners are fine. For people who are saying, oh, summoners are dead, summoners are dead. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're not dead. People are still going to play them. It's a very lazy build. You don't have to click anything, literally. So they're fine and people are still going to play them, but obviously they're going to be a little bit more in line with other things, which I think is a good thing, because obviously having everybody just fucking flock to summoners for multiple leagues in a row becomes a little boring, and obviously crafting becomes a little bit more stale as well. So that's about it for that. Looks like I said, just about everything that has to do with minions got nerfed in one way or another. This another decent change though is the temporal chains. 50% less effect against players. Previously had 40% reduced. So basically it's 10% less curse effect on yourself when you're playing reverse chill build. Now, basically that's a nerf to you know, headhunter abusers, people who full juice and get as big as their screen and the only thing they can see is like one leg from their character and all that. It's a little bit of a nerf. 10% I don't think is going to change a whole lot. That being said, they also nerfed Soulstice Vigil, which is somewhere in here. Soulstice Vigil has 30 to 40% increased damage, so they actually buffed the damage. They buffed the mana regen, but the Shaper's Presence buff, which is granted basically for the length of your buffs, now grants minus 20% to buff expiration from 33%. So another basically equivalent of like 13% curse effect there, for a total about, you know, 20-23% curse effect less on your character. So for the people who are doing super juiced up, you know, headhunter builds, you're going to feel like, you know, keeping up all those buffs for as long is going to be a little bit harder. Is it going to be impossible? Of course not. One simple thing to do is you'll be able to just get a Timeless Jewel with curse effectiveness, so to basically remove all these negative effects from the nerfs. Which brings me back to basically, I think Timeless Jewels that are curse effect related are probably going to be fairly expensive this league and in decently high demand. I expect this league to be a little bit more like a breach league, where, you know, you pop something up, it just starts going all over the map. Lots of monsters to kill, lots of XP to gain, lots of loot to drop. So since I'm expecting kind of like a breach league, I'm expecting headhunters to be expensive. Another reason why I'm expecting headhunter to be expensive is because we have Beyond. We actually have Beyond in a breach-like league for 5 chaos, which is absolutely not bad at all. We also have Blight for 8 chaos. I don't think you'll ever lose money running Blight, even if it's 8 chaos. But a lot of people are going to be running double Beyond maps or triple Beyond maps or whatever, with a lot of headhunter juice. and the fact that it's going to be harder to get those buffs up for as long as people has been getting them for, I think Timeless Jewel that are curse effect based are probably going to be in pretty high demand and therefore should be priced accordingly. So that's that when it comes to the nerf to that whole game style or play style, if you want to call it that. Otherwise, looks like we did get a buff to Kinetic Blast. It looks like Wanderers are going to be a thing this league, and they're going to be a big thing. They also buffed Power Siphon, which I think was already super strong. So with the buff to Kinetic Blast, the buff to Power Siphon, and everything else that they did to Wanderers, because they also added that new skill, which is like a wand skill, whatever it's called. I can't quite remember exactly what it's called. The Storm, no, not the Storm, by the Kinetic Bolt. I think we're going to be in a Wander League. This is probably going to be a pretty heavy league for Wanders. A lot of people are going to be juicing up maps, obviously, because, like I said, it's going to be a Breach-like league. At least it seems like it. And we have access to double, triple, beyond, stuff like that. So it looks like people are going to be getting those very fast farming map characters. It's not going to be a bossing league like we had last league or something like that. It's all going to be about clear speed, clear speed, clear speed, which I'm expecting Headhunters, for example, to be pretty expensive this league, even at the start of the league. So if you want a Headhunter, I would say this league, it's probably going to be a good idea to get it quickly, unless, of course, you can use that currency to invest into things that are going to gain more value than the price of Headhunter early in the league, which, you know, could be a decent way to end up basically making more currency so that when you get the Headhunter, you don't go full broke because your investments were pretty good. Otherwise, anything else I want to touch in there? It looks like, yeah, they nerfed Feeding Frenzy, not Unleash. Well, yes, Unleash, but they'd also nerf Feeding Frenzy. They nerfed Necromancer. So everything that's to do with minions, again, has been nerfed. Still think it's going to be played a whole bunch. Now, this is pretty interesting. The whole thing about the temple mods are also getting the same nerf that like Shaper and Elder mods got last league. So they all pretty much got cut by half. Anything that's to do with extra chaos damage pretty much just got cut by half. So, you know, Takati's weapons, stuff like that, looks like they got hurt pretty bad. Do I think they're going to be absolutely useless or worthless? No, I still think they're going to be very good bases if you can get the proper mods to go with them, because they're basically like a free T2 mod, a free like T2 percentage mod. And if you can get, like, let's say flaring on a physical weapon, which is T1 flat, you're still looking at a very, very good base that you can do other things with, such as, you know, slamming them with the new exalts, or, well, they're not new anymore, but with the exalts to, you know, get yourself potentially a mirror base, even. So otherwise, yeah, it looks like they nerfed everything once again that has to do with additional chaos damage. Nothing crazy there. To be expected, honestly. I was kind of expecting this. Things that came out of the temple have been strong for a very long time, so I was kind of expecting this nerf. Nothing crazy there. Now, one of the things that is going to change quite a bit is the fossil crafting. So everything that was to do with fossil crafting when it came to mods specific to fossil crafting has been removed from the pools, from the fossil crafting itself. So what does this tell us? Basically, what they're trying to do here is to add value to the basically to the bases of specific conquerors' influence. Now, I don't really like this, and the reason why I don't really like this is because it forces us to use some bases that we might not want to use, straight up. So, for example, one of the good example here is that, let's say you wanted nearby enemies have minus fire resistance, you're going to need to use a Warlord influenced helmet. The problem is, maybe you wanted minus fire resistance on something that is absolutely nothing to do with Warlord's influence, so they're kind of forcing us to do certain crafting on certain bases, and I'm not a big fan of that. I think it takes away a little bit of freedom from the people who are crafting, but at the same time, fossil crafting has been so strong for so long that a lot of people completely were able to forget or ignore the fact that these bases existed and just use fossil because the fossil crafting mods were just that much better than anything else. Especially when you're thinking about something like the nearby enemies have minus resistances, or one of the other ones is for body armors. The socket attacks of minus 15 to mana cost is now a Warlord's influence. You know that I don't really agree with this, because if you're trying to craft a chess piece with minus 15 mana cost, chances are you're not going to use a Warlord's Influence chess piece. You would have used a Hunter or an Elder chess piece, because they're the attack base critical strike chance chests, and they're just not Warlord chests. So now we're being basically pushed into using Warlords for certain things, or pushed into using Redeemers for other things. And I think that takes a little bit of freedom away from the crafters, and I'm not a big fan of that. That being said, I don't think it's going to change the meta that much. It's just that people who want to focus craft on certain things, so let's say somebody wants to focus craft those socketed attacks instead of grabbing just about any bases, they're going to have to go ahead and slam those bases with Warlord influences before they fossil craft. Because guess what? Those fossil crafted mods are still going to keep the tags that they were assigned. So for example, minus fire resistance to nearby enemies is still going to be a fire tag, which means using a scorched fossil is still going to increase the chance of getting it. So nothing's really going to change, except that we're going to be forced into using certain influence bases that sometimes, in some cases, may not be optimal. Like I said, for example, this one here, the socket attacks and minus 15 mana cost for Warlords is a little bit of a pain in the ass. But all the other stuff I think is going to be pretty much fairly the same. Nothing's going to change that much. Unique item balance, I did talk about Soulstice Vigil. It's a decent nerf. Otherwise, Surfy's Heart grants Soul Eater for 20 seconds upon using a Val skill instead of 10 seconds. That's pretty good. That basically means Zerfy's Heart is probably going to be expensive. Again, we're talking about twice the duration on Soul Eater. Twice the duration when you use a Val skill, which basically means you have permanent Soul Eater if you use Zerfy's Heart. Like, literally, you have permanent Soul Eater duration. And that's pretty good, especially thinking of this league. I'm thinking it's going to be like a breach-ish like league. This is probably going to be fairly expensive and in high demand. Zerfy's Heart getting double the duration on the Soul Eater is actually pretty massive. It means you have it up literally permanent uptime, which can make up for the let's say not so great things about using Zerfy's Heart, such as the fact that you need a ton of strength or dexterity or whatever. The stat requirement can be a little bit annoying, but twice the duration is that's pretty massive. I think Zerfy's Heart, if you want a Zerfy's, I'd say get it early, because when people catch on to this, I'm expecting Zerfy's to be going up in price a fair bit. Looks like I didn't really read this too much. I'm not sure if it's a buff or a nerf. They changed the Cobalt version of the Grand Spectrum from 30 mana to 25% crit chance. That basically means that Mana Guardians kind of get fucked by that, because they can no longer stack the 30 flat mana from Grand Spectrum. That's kind of pepega. I'm not a big fan of that. Otherwise, the other Grand Spectrum, well, the Viridian got a 3% buff to elemental damage, but it's just simply not worth it. It's not enough damage at all. The Crimson version gives you all res instead of armor now, which is better, but at the same time, who gives a crap about 7 all res? Total waste of a jewel slot. Existing versions are not affected. Who cares? Fever Mind got cut by half on the mana cost of the skills, which I think is a bad thing, because a lot of people who use Fever Mind were using it for the fact that it's giving you that 100% more mana cost of skills, which allows you to use certain mechanics that use a lot of your mana quickly. But I'm guessing they changed that because of a certain of the changes that they made to the other items and whatnot that are going to be kind of mana based, which I believe this league is going to be decently about. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a lot of Wanderers, and they're going to be like using Stormbind and stuff like that allow them to basically get damage based on their mana usage. So the nerf to Fever Mind is probably because of that. It does give you more spell damage, though. They almost doubled it. It's 30 to 40%, or not quite double, but it's plus 10 to both the minimum and the maximum spell damage, which is decent. Nice little buff, but whatever. So Fate of the Val, this whatever. Shadow Stitch looks like he got a 250 to 350 increases defenses. That's cool, but at the same time, not super useful. Not a lot of people use Shadow Stitch because you can't change the colors. You can't change the implicits. It's just not used a whole lot. That being said, a good Shadow Stitch can be worth an absolute crazy amount of currency. I'm not sure why they nerfed On's Heritage. I don't know if anybody who actually uses this, but it looks like they nerfed it a little bit. One of the big ones is the Shaper's Touch. Shaper's Touch nerf basically got cut by half to both the strength, like the mana, and the ES. So you were getting 1 mana per 4 strength, and now it's 2 mana per 4 strength. Or sorry, you were gaining 2, and now it's 1 mana per 4 strength, and it's 1 increase per 10 strength instead of 2. So they cut the mana and the ES by half, which means Shaper's Touch are probably not going to be completely dead, but definitely going to see a lot less play. And for anybody who was thinking, I'm going to farm Shaper as soon as possible this league, I'm going to pull out a boss killer and just go farm some Shaper's Touch, well, I don't expect them to be 4 exalts for like a week like they were last league at all. This nerf is pretty massive, and alongside the nerfs to all the Necros and to Mana Guardians as well, when you put all of this together, I think we're looking at basically Shaper's Touch being more in line with prices in previous league before all the Summoner blew up. So is Shaper going to be not profitable? I don't think so. I think Shaper is still going to be a very viable strategy. Boss killing is going to be a viable strategy. That being said, Shaper's Touch definitely won't see the prices that it saw last league. I would say. That being said, I could be wrong, of course. Crown of Eyes basically got a 50% attacks boost. Spell damage to attacks at basically 150%. So basically 50% increased damage. That's cool. It's not massive or anything, but it's definitely a nice little buff. So like I said, we're going back to the fact that we're looking at probably a Wander meta, and Crown of Eyes is amazing for Wanders. Otherwise, anything else I really want to talk about in here? Looks like they nerfed some of the mana items as well, like Mind of the Council, because probably people were going to do some exploiting with the whole mana issue. They did nerf the Baron as well, I guess. That's one we can talk about. Grants 10 to 20% minion life instead of 20%, which is like whatever, because you can divine it. +1 number of raised zombies as life from 2%, so 1%. +1 number of raised zombies per 500 strength from 300 strength. That's what I meant to say. So that's pretty big, at least, with at least 1,000 strength. So we're looking at about, let's say you had like 2,000 strength on your character, you could have had, you know, if you had 2,000 strength, you could get like 1 zombie every 300. Now you're getting 1 every 500, so you're going to get basically 4 zombies instead of like 6 or something like that. Yeah, 6. So it's a fairly big nerf to the Baron, actually, especially to the very, very high-end players who are stacking a massive amount of strength. They also nerfed the damage dealt as life from 1.5 to 2% instead of a flat 2%. So we're looking at basically a nerf all around the Baron helmet. So again, if you're thinking about maybe enchanting the Baron helmets in Lab early league, maybe stay away from that a little bit. It's definitely going to see less play because they're nerfing summoners from every single angle possible, it seems like. Death's Harp got its critical strike multiplier cut by half, and that also applies to Death's Opuses. That's a bit annoying. I don't think that bow is ever really that strong anyways. I think a crafted bow is just that much better. I think it was a good league start bow that a lot of people use, actually. So the fact that they cut the critical strike multiplier by 50% or by half is actually kind of, in my opinion, not exactly useful. It's just going to turn people away from using it as a leveling option or a budget option, and that's kind of stupid, I would say. I'm not a big fan of this change. Otherwise, that's about all I wanted to talk about when it comes to the actual patch notes. I've been talking about basically my predictions for the entirety of the video and what I think is going to be good for making currency. I think obviously if you want to farm Lab, go ahead and farm Lab. It's going to be good. It's always good. If you want to make currency, you can also do some bossing character. While I think the Shaper's Touch are going to lose a lot of value, I still think farming Shaper is going to be amazing because the flasks are probably are probably going to be very, very, very expensive. That being said, we are getting a div card for a Dying Sun flask, but I'm pretty sure it's going to drop from like the boss in Act 9 or whatever, or Act 8, the moon and sun things. So it's probably not going to be super, super, super available, that div card. So I still think Dying Sun is going to retain a lot of its value. And honestly, if it's a Wander meta, we're going to be looking at probably a very, very expensive price for the flask. That being said, the flask is a lot more rare than the gloves, so obviously it's not going to be as safe to farm Shaper as it was last league, where it was almost impossible to lose currency. That being said, you're also getting the fragments for Uber Elder, or Elder, whatever. So I don't think that's fine, because obviously those are going to cover the majority of the cost of your actual Shaper sets. So if you're looking to make a boss killer to farm Shaper, Uber Elder, and like Sirius, I still think you're going to make a whole lot of currency. Just maybe not quite as much as, say, last league, because this league, in my opinion, is going to be way more focused on actually mapping and juicing up maps, speed farming maps, and builds that can just move around maps very quickly, that don't care for the layouts, and that can speed run basically Sirius and whatnot. So that's my predictions when it comes to the meta. I think we're looking at, Wanderers, bow characters, stuff like that can just move around quickly. I think Headhunters are going to be very expensive. Inspired Learnings, if you can grab some early, they're probably going to shoot up in price after the first week or so of the league. That's another prediction of mine. And otherwise, that's pretty much it. Now, the last thing I want to cover is the Cluster Jewels. The Cluster Jewels, I don't know much about them, to be honest. I haven't seen that much about it. I do know that there's going to be like the big ones, the medium ones, and the small ones, and depending like on the level of the actual jewel, basically the higher levels are going to be bigger clusters. And in the bigger clusters, you can have other jewels that can be mediums, and in the mediums you have ones that can do small. So in the end, you can expand your skill tree by a fair bit when you think about it, because let's say you have one big one that houses two medium ones, and the two medium ones each house one small one. You're looking at a very big extension of your actual passive tree for who knows what that's going to be. It looks like you're going to be able to get keystones from them, so potentially some very, very high-priced jewels from there. You're going to be able to get also notables, which is going to be nice, and you're going to be able to get just the regular nodes from that you normally get from the tree, but with some additional bonuses depending on the actual cluster. So I think cluster jewels, honestly, if you can pay attention to cluster jewels, if you can pay attention to the meta, and if they're searchable, the cluster jewels, early in the league on the trading websites, I think flipping cluster jewels is going to be very, very, very profitable. The thing is, you're going to have to pay attention to basically what's possible to actually receive, and basically the flipping margins of them and the flipping potential. So it's definitely going to be something I'm going to be studying in the first few days of a league. Is going to be cluster jewels. I'm going to keep an eye out for cluster jewels. I'm really interested to see how strong they can really be and how they're going to work. I know they're going to be craftable. So they're going to be craftable, and they're considered enchants, not actually implicits, which means if you corrupt them, you can get an implicit on top of the enchant. With the enchant cannot change, but the cluster jewel itself can be crafted. So depending how strong they really are, and because of the changes to fossil crafting, one other thing that I want to note is that you guys should expect alterations to be very, very expensive earlier on. So if you can invest in some alterations, go ahead and invest in alterations, because I expect alts to be going up in value and very, very expensive. Because a lot of these mods that were really good from fossil crafting, people are probably going to alt spam, and then they're going to multi-mod their items. And if they go with that route, then we're looking at a very high usage of alterations. So maybe like 1 to 5, 1 to 4 even, who knows. Not necessarily like day 2 of a league, but as the league progresses, I'm expecting alterations to become very, very expensive. So I've been going on for about 30 minutes. I think I've talked about just about everything I wanted to talk about. those are my recommendations and predictions for the league. I could be wrong on just about everything I've said. Don't quote me on that. It's just my own opinion and the way I see things based on every other league I've played and every other time I've read patch notes and my reaction to these leagues going on for as long as I've been playing PoE. So as always, I do want to say a huge thank you to my patrons. Mega thanks, huge thanks to Eddy, Emil, Ilya, Jimmy, Enumag, Kara, Neko, Tim, and Tyrone. Also thanks to Drew, Jared, KFish, and Jason. Special thanks to Casticus, Andreas, Dio, Mathias, Rakesh, Mr. Coffee, and Bob. Wait, you guys can't actually see this for some reason. There you go. Now you can. And to the top supporters, Mr. Coffee, Casticus, Emil the Delver, KFish, Super J, General XTC, and Mathias. You guys earned yourself a bunch of stars this time around, so congratulations to you guys. Thank you guys all so much for the support. To the people who are on this list, to the people who were on this list at some point, to the people who will be on this list at some point, and to everybody who's watching, everybody who stops by and says hi on Twitch and everything. I'm going to be streaming the league start. I'm going to be streaming the entirety of the league, at least what I'm playing of it, which is probably going to be a month and a half or 2 months. So if you guys are interested in learning how to make currency and just being more efficient in general when it comes to currency, stop by the stream. Links is going to be in the description as always. If you're last minute looking for a squad for some PoE team play, check out my Discord. I do have a looking for team place in there. So if you're interested and you'd like to play, in a team setting and you've never done it, or you just don't have a team this time around, make sure to look at that. There's a bunch of people looking for squads out there, and best of luck to everybody in the upcoming league. Hopefully you guys have a whole lot of fun. Hopefully you have a good day, and that's going to be Matthew signing out. Until the next one. Peace.